Debate, reprise de débat, the honourable member for Calgary Rocky Ridge.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And, since I was elected in 2015, I have spent most of my energy speaking up for the workers that I represent in Calgary who have been systematically crushed by this government, its NDP coalition partner, and sadly, from 2015 to 2019, by a short-lived NDP government in Alberta. So I say today that this bill is not one that is going to be the great prescriptive answer for the workers in my riding. The workers in my riding have been punished by this government, and it appears are going to continue to be so. The NDP has, so the workers in my riding, look, Mr. Speaker, I'm passionate about their freedom to work, about their freedom to organize, about their freedom to bargain collectively through union membership. I am passionate about freedom of association, Mr. Speaker. It's an essential and a foundational freedom that this country was built on. So let there be no doubt about that. But also let there be no doubt that there is only one party in this House of Commons that supports workers. It's this party, Mr. Speaker. The other three parties in this House have never supported the workers in my community. Everything that this NDP Liberal government and their fellow travellers in the bloc does, every instinct that they possess runs counter to the interests of the workers in my riding. Let's examine the track record of this NDP Liberal government as they relate to the workers in my community. The very first thing this government did, even before Parliament met for the first time, was cancel the Northern Gateway pipeline by order in council. This decision instantly killed thousands of jobs, union jobs, non-union jobs, Indigenous community jobs, every kind of job you can imagine, Mr. Speaker. The people that would have been employed by that project were among the highest paid workers in the Canadian economy. And had that critical infrastructure been actually built, it would have led to thousands of new jobs in extraction projects that never materialized for lack of the infrastructure that they deliberately killed, as they're literally the first thing they did when they took office, Mr. Speaker. They also denied the world access to Canada's energy products, leaving the world vulnerable to dictator oil, much to our folly and what we see tragically happening in the world today as Putin funds his war machine with energy exports that could have been displaced by Canadian exports. So they passed C-59, which ensured that no major project would ever be approved again. They used to have talking points that tried to deny that this was the case, but the Minister of Environment, when he was a candidate, he let the mask slip, and he admitted that killing the energy industry was exactly the purpose of C-69. And who pays for this, Mr. Speaker? The workers. It's the workers that pay for the destruction to the Canadian economy that has happened in that sector under this government. That bill ruined the lives of thousands of workers and their families. 200,000 energy workers lost their jobs under this NDP government, Liberal government, Mr. Speaker. And I say that deliberately, Mr. Speaker. Let's not forget that before the federal NDP Liberal coalition took place, there was a different alliance there between the NDP and the Liberals, and that was the Alberta NDP and this government. They together destroyed thousands of jobs and the lives that depend on them. So I say again, Mr. Speaker, these are union jobs, non-union jobs, and Indigenous community jobs. The callous way that the NDP and Liberals threw away all these jobs and made sure they would not come back is shameful, and we'll take no lessons from them on protecting jobs for workers, whether they belong to a union or not. So I've said it before in this House, Mr. Speaker, especially between 15 and 18. I had grown men in their 50s reduced to tears in my office for the loss of livelihoods. These are highly paid professional people, proud people. Some of them even had to endure, were old enough, they were entering the workforce when Pierre Trudeau was Prime Minister. And they said, look, I'm even managed to survive the NEP, and now I don't have a job. Women who had reached into the senior levels of corporate Calgary, suddenly without a job. I knocked on doors. I knocked on one particular door that I remember where a mom said that their family came to Canada 20 years ago, and now her husband was working in the Middle East, her son was working in Texas. They had to leave the country for work in the energy industry, so I'll take nothing from this government on jobs. What are they doing, though, now, Mr. Speaker? Subsidizing replacement workers from foreign countries to come and take work away that should be done from Canadians. $7 billion, the Northvolt project, with foreign replacement workers. $15 billion to Stellantis for foreign replacement workers. It's disgraceful, Mr. Speaker, and it's shameful the way that they will come here and try and lecture Conservatives on supporting workers. So here we are. We're now at the end of the year. The NDP Liberal government tabled this bill banning replacement workers in federally regulated industries as per the demand put upon this government by the NDP. This isn't what the Liberals campaigned on. This is something that the Liberals have voted against. The NDP has tabled this very policy in the House through private members' business, and these Liberals, the same Liberals that are speaking this morning in debate, who voted against this, are now would have you believe that this is somehow part of their policy and what they ran on. So this is clearly, yes, long-standing NDP policy, but this is nothing more than the NDP tail wagging the Liberal dog. And that's exactly why we call it the NDP Liberal government. The NDP tail is wagging this Liberal dog. So this bill will bans workers from working in federally regulated industries if the workers who belong to a union go on strike. It's a bill that risks pitting workers against each other. Workers who choose not to join a union are workers too, Mr. Speaker. Workers who cross picket lines are workers too, Mr. Speaker, but not to these NDP Liberals. According to the NDP Liberals, I've even heard it this morning, the use of dehumanizing language. They refer to these workers as scabs. And Mr. Speaker, think about that. It's a degrading, humiliating, and dehumanizing word that they use, not because this is about power for workers. It's not. It's about control, and that's why they use this type of language. But, Mr. Speaker, the market is an amazing and undeniable force of nature, and it does tend to sort things out quickly and allows the best decisions to be made at the bargaining table and incentivizes agreements. But this government is presiding over a cost of living crisis where rent has doubled, where payments are up 150%, where a generation of Canadian workers have given up, young Canadian workers have given up on the dream of home ownership because they can't afford to live in this country. We've seen food inflation. We've seen every kind of inflation fueled by taxes paid by workers, Mr. Speaker. So this NDP Liberal government has nothing to teach Conservatives or to tell Canadians about supporting workers. There's only one party that is supporting workers, the one party that stands for powerful paychecks that can be used to buy homes that they can afford in safe communities, Mr. Speaker. That's what the Conservative vision is for this country, not spending billions of tax dollars paid for by workers to pay foreign workers to come and take their jobs away from them and bid up the price of homes in their communities. It's shameful, Mr. Speaker. So I will take no lessons from this Liberal NDP government on support for workers. The workers in my riding have seen the sharp end of this Liberal government. The desperation I saw at the doors, especially in the 2019 election, Mr. Speaker. This community, my community that I represent, is full of talented, hardworking, ambitious workers who have been crushed by this government. And the good news, Mr. Speaker, is they see hope. They know that the workers are increasingly turning to the Conservative Party. And it's the workers in Canada that are going to elect a Conservative government that will indeed deliver the powerful paychecks that Canadians need to be able to afford to live and rein in the wasteful spending and corporate welfare that has become endemic under this government. I don't know if I have any time left, Mr. Speaker, 10 seconds. Well, I can only imagine what kind of questions might come, but it's only the Conservatives in this place that are standing up for workers in Canada.
Questions and comments? Question commentaire. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The member is saying support workers, support jobs. And one of the things that supports workers and jobs is trade agreements. And yet we see just last week, the Conservative Party en masse voted against the Canada-Ukraine trade agreement. Can the member indicate as to why it is that he himself chose to vote against the Canada-Ukraine trade agreement?
The Honourable Member for Calgary Rocky Ridge.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure that question was out of order for relevance, and but I can understand why this member would not wish to ask a question relevant to the speech that I just made. It's because he knows he's one of the members that has already voted against anti-replacement worker legislation in this House more than once. So I fully understand why he won't talk about the bill or ask me a question about this bill, because his flip-flop that he is undertaking right now is not something that he wants well understood by his constituents, perhaps.
Question commentaire. Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Elmwood Transcona.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Just following up on some of the remarks that the member made about Canada's oil and gas industry, I wonder if he could confirm, as I believe is true, that the Canadian oil and gas sector today extracts more barrels per day than at any other time in Canadian history. And I wonder if he wants to confirm the number above and beyond the over $30 billion that this Liberal government has put into the TMX pipeline, the amount of public subsidy for the Canadian oil and gas sector. And while he's at it, perhaps he's got numbers for temporary foreign workers who work in the oil and gas industry, because it has certainly made use of TFWs, and workers under the International Labour Mobility Program as well. Perhaps he'd like to comment on those phenomena.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Rocky Ridge.
I'll try and get to all that. Look, there is demand for the product that the energy industry produces, despite everything that this government has done to kill that industry. And the billions and billions of dollars that the businesses lost, the hundreds of thousands of lost jobs, we're a long way from catching up to where we could have been, and the promise that existed. On the TMX, you know, he's right to bring up the waste on that. This is a project that should have been built with private capital. We had a private proponent that was going to build the TMX with their own money. If it were to balloon from $4 billion to $30 billion, that would be on them and up for their share. It would be their shareholders that could worry about that. But no, it is now the people and the workers of Canada that are paying for the overage now that the government was put in a position where they were to nationalize it after they chased private capital out. I'm not even sure if I remember what his third question was, but I do thank him for the. Thank you. I oppose subsidizing any industry that the Crown subsidizing a private business that would turn around and then. Instead, on the promise of creating jobs, when they're really just importing temporary labor, bidding up the cost of housing, and making the taxpayer, the workers in Canada, pay for the jobs for the foreign replacement.